So I think the idea is that you can approach it from all angles, and you might not quite work out what it is if you're approaching from the rear, but as soon as you start to see the elephant's body appearing, hopefully the concept will be easily read.
Earlier this year, the LFA launched the second edition of Pews and Perches, a design competition in collaboration with the Royal Docks team. The competition looked to highlight the positive and transformative impact of small-scale interventions in the public realm, which can provide locals, visitors and Londoners alike with a unique new space to sit, rest and play. We caught up with each of the winning designers to find out the story behind the benches. Here, Rachel and Angus tell us the story behind ELE-Bench.
So I'll introduce my partner first, Angus, and myself, Rachel.
Together we formed RAB Studio, a partnership that we concocted during lockdown, and this is the ELE-Bench.
Sort of the start of lockdown, we've been looking at some kind of public realm projects, and we saw the LFA's competition on the website initially, and we're really keen to look at some form of architecture which was starting to address the issues of COVID, which were becoming very present in our lives. So we started just doing a few sketches really at home together, and then came up with the idea once we'd done a bit more research about the Royal Docks and the history of them. The inspiration for the ELE-Bench came specifically really from the history of London Royal Docks. So we were looking at, obviously, its trading history in the past. There's some amazing archive footage and photography that we'd found, and one in particular was, I think it was George V Docks, Angus?
Yeah, so the George V Docks, when a strange delivery of elephants was brought in one day destined for the circus, and this was a kind of image that stayed in the memory of a lot of the locals and is always kind of recounted and recalled. So that was kind of something we thought would be quite a fun idea to bring back and bring this moment in time back to the docks.
The other thing which we were always really keen to incorporate into the design was sort of a play space for families and children. There's obviously quite a lot of new development in the area. There's a lot more homes and a lot of play spaces and things being created in the parks, and something that we wanted to introduce to the docks was kind of a sense of fun and playfulness, which is why we ended up picking specifically the elephants. And then also starting to pick up on some of the brief requirements of how do we design for public seating in our current climate with COVID. And one thing that we started to play with was the idea of how many people you sit on a bench, which orientation do they sit? Could we sit people back to back? Would that reduce the risk? And that's how we came up with the idea sort of the spine of the elephant bisecting the bench. And then I think the other elements that started to feed into the design was when we were walking around the docks. It's a pretty windy, it's an exposed place at times. What would you want if you were sat? Probably a bit more shelter. So that fed quite well into the idea for the elephant's ears, which sort of wrap the bench and start to give you that sense of enclosure and just a bit of a windbreak as well from some of the extremes.
Originally, when we were thinking about the bench, we really wanted to go for something as soft as possible on the bench area, something kind of that resembled play furniture or play space design. And then kind of through research and a bit of development with suppliers and manufacturers and looking at what may be suitable, we kind of landed on cork as a good example of something that could be durable enough to weather outside in the kind of docklands landscape, and also, you know, be a softer type of finish opposed to the backrest, for example, which is a solid surface by Hanex.
What we were always keen for was that the bench could be something that it could be not just for sitting on, but something that children could climb on and play on, and that was driving our material choices. As Angus said, with the foam initially was something we explored. We then, I think, looked into some rubber surfaces, and we ended up settling on cork because one, for its robustness and it being able to deal with being an exposed climate, but also its softness, its sustainability. That was one of the key driving factors.
We've had a good dialogue with Crafted by Design, who are the manufacturers for the Hanex element, the thermoformed backrest and the ears. So that's obviously kind of the most complex part of the bench, and therefore required quite kind of specialist knowledge. We had a very good reception and feedback from the manufacturers as to it's not every day that an elephant lands on their desk, so they quite enjoyed that. And again, in a time where the day-to-day has seemed very familiar, it's quite unfamiliar for them, I think. Hopefully, I mean, the bench just makes people smile and they enjoy it in the way that we hope they would, and that's the kind of end goal, isn't it? To kind of have these moments where you're walking around somewhere, you have a place to sit, a place to kind of enjoy a view, enjoy a cup of coffee, maybe even read a book, who knows?
To see pictures of the installations or to find out more information, head to lfa.london/perches.